ममता बॅनर्जीला तुम्ही फेस करू शकतात, चेहरा होऊ शकतात 2024च्या इलेक्शन मध्ये. तर मी काँग्रेसच्या लोकांना विचारतो, ममता बॅनर्जी क्यों, हमारे पास राहुल गांधी है. असं जेव्हा
जो तो पक्ष आणि विशेषतः काँग्रेस पक्षातला ॲव्हरेज सहकारी हे आपल्या नेतृत्वाच्या सोबती यत्किंचित सुद्धा कधी वेगळी भूमिका घेण्याच्या मनस्थितीत नसतात.
एक अहंकार आहे का अजूनही, की अजूनपर्यंत काय
अनरिअलिस्टिक एक्सपेक्टेशन्स आहे
की जुनी काँग्रेस आहे?
कसं आहे की मागे एकदा मी गोष्ट एक सांगितली होती की उत्तर प्रदेशमध्ये असे जमीनदार आहेत, त्यांच्याकडे मोठी शेती आहे, गावामध्ये त्यांची हवेली असते. लँड सीलिंगचा कायदा आला, त्यांच्या त्या मोठी शेतीची जमिनी गेल्या, अनेक लोकांच्यात वाचल्या गेल्या. त्यांची हवेली आहे तशी गावात, पण त्या हवेलीची मरामत किंवा दुरुस्ती करण्याची ताकद राहिली नाही, कारण त्या शेतीचं उत्पन्न पहिल्यासारखं राहिलं नाही. काही 1000 एकर जमीन राहायची, तिथं 15 एकर 20 एकर झाली. पण सकाळी जेव्हा तो जमीनदार उठतो आपल्या हवेलीमध्ये आणि बाहेर जेऊन बघतो आजूबाजूचं हिरवं पीक, तो म्हणतो की हे सगळं माझं होतं, आता नाही आहे.
तर कुठे ना कुठे काँग्रेस जुनी जमीनदारी झाली.
मराठीमध्ये त्याला म्हणतात काय, उजाड गावाचा पाटील.
तितकं काही म्हणत नाही,
पण पुराणी जुनी जमीनदारी झाली आहे.
तिची मानसिकता एकेकाळी सवन जे थोडे काश्मीर पासून कन्याकुमारीवरून काँग्रेस हो, पण ते होती आहे नाही. ते होती हे ॲक्सेप्ट केलं पाहिजे, आणि ती ॲक्सेप्ट करण्याची मानसिकता जशी तयार होईल तशी जवळीक वाढेल.
All right, folks, this is just one excerpt of a very long interview that both Rajdeep Sardesai, our consulting editor, Sahil Joshi, Mumbai bureau chief, who did of Sharad Pawar. It was a very long interview. We've taken out just few excerpts tonight. Congratulations to you both of getting this mega exclusive. Rajdeep, I want to begin with you to the chunk that we played out. Very important 2 points that were made. Point number 1, where he's linking his ally, the Congress, to a UP Zamindar who's lost his Zamindari, where the land holdings have shrunk, but in their heads they still think they are Zamindars.
Absolutely. And, I think it is extremely significant because Sharad Pawar, this was an extended interview we were doing on the eve of Ganesh Chaturthi because, like it or not, at the moment, Sharad Pawar is seen as Maharashtra's Neta number 1 and Ganesh Chaturthi is Mumbai's biggest festival. So this was for Mumbai Tak. And the wide-ranging interview came down to the point of national politics because, as you know, Preeti, there's been so much talk of will the opposition come together before the 2024 elections? How will it actually come together? What role will Mr. Pawar play? And he made very significant points about the role that the Congress has to play. And he said the Congress has to change its mentality. He said the Congress cannot, as the interview says, behave like the old UP Zamindars who don't realize that their land has shrunk. They still have that same mentality. Then he went into specific instances. For example, he said in West Bengal, we all thought that we should put our weight behind Mamta Banerjee. And yet the Congress fought the election against Mamta Banerjee. So in a sense, I think there was a bit of frustration because Mr. Pawar believes that the only way the opposition can revive in a way is if the Congress gets back its relevance. In fact, he stressed on the point that many of us have been congressmen all our lives, the likes of Mamta Banerjee, the likes of Sharad Pawar, and he felt that if the opposition has to come together, the Congress has to revive, it has to importantly strengthen its regional leaders. Now, in Maharashtra itself, Mr. Pawar is in alliance with the Congress and the Shiv Sena, and there is a general sense that it's the Congress which has become the Kamzor Kadi or the weak link. And the Shiv Sena and the NCP have been taking all the major decisions. So there's a lot of local level, grassroots level antagonisms playing out between the Congress and the NCP Sena. Mr. Pawar put up a brave front and said this government will last 5 years. In fact, he was insistent on that. But he said at a national level, if you have to build this national alliance, then the Congress has to get its act together. I asked him whether, there was any talk of bringing these various parties together. And he said it was very difficult until the Congress recognized that it alone cannot call the shots anymore, that it has to change its mentality. It cannot remain a party of the past. It has to become a party of the present and the future. So I think, in a sense, there was a sense of frustration more than anything else, as well as a reality check. I think Mr. Pawar is offering a reality check to the Congress at a time when the opposition is attempting to bring together various forces together, but finding that more and more difficult. I mean, the elephant in the room, of course, Preeti, is Rahul Gandhi and his role. Mr. Pawar was much more cryptic about that when I asked him a question on that, and he said, look, that is for the Congress to decide. But clearly, what it suggests is that the opposition is a long way away from forging this kind of wide-ranging alliance, even though 2024 is some way away. The opposition is still a long way away from forging that alliance. So I think it's significant when Mr. Pawar, who is perhaps now the most experienced leader in the opposition, points out perhaps the weaknesses in the Congress party at the moment.
You know, stay with me. I want to bring in Sahil as well. He also, alongside Rajdeep, interviewed Sharad Pawar. You know, Sahil, Rajdeep says that he was cryptic about addressing Rahul Gandhi. The fact there is really, he's not Rahul Gandhi's biggest fan is something that is often talked about. But, you know, when Rajdeep asks him, and, you know, we are transcribing it there for our viewers because, of course, this interview was in Marathi, that who is the possibility, you know, possible leader for this big united opposition? The Congress always says that it should be Rahul Gandhi. He says that some people are sensitive about the leadership. They do not take any other suggestion. Pretty much hinting he doesn't have faith in Rahul Gandhi.
You know, absolutely. What is the main point? What Mr. Pawar was trying to make when we asked him specifically about winnability of the Congress candidate? He says that there was a time when on the name of Indira Gandhi or say even Rajiv Gandhi, the Congress had this confidence that their candidates can get elected, which right now Prime Minister Modi enjoys. That's what he clearly said, that the BJP member of parliament entering into the parliament clearly knows that he's there, he's elected there because of the charisma Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds. Whereas the Congress has lost this charisma after Congress's debacle in 1989. And after that, you know, the Congress could never regain that kind of a stature in the national politics. Most importantly, you know, look at the answer. When we asked him that why cannot, you know, he was telling us that how there are differences within the opposition alliance, like the Communist and the Congress are at loggerheads in Kerala, Mamata Banerjee and the Congress are at loggerheads in West Bengal, and that is where the alliance issues happens. Then when I asked him that this happened in 2004, Mamata Banerjee was part of the UPA government, even though she was fighting against Congress and communists in communist parties in West Bengal. The communists were supporting that government even if they had they were in opposition in Kerala. Why cannot that happen today? Look at the answer. The answer clearly says that the Congress is weakened today. The numbers which Congress has today is hardly 40 to 45, and that is the reason why that kind of grand alliance, you know, it's very difficult to form. But what he says that on many number of issues, the people should come together. Even today, there are a lot of people outside Congress. He gave example of Mamata and he himself, that, you know, they belong to the ideology of Gandhi and Nehru, but you know, it's Congress which is pulling down the whole opposition alliance. The strength of the Congress, the weak Congress, is basically somewhere an obstacle in getting all these parties together and create a larger alliance group against might of Modi and BJP in the center. That is a very relevant point. What could happen in Maharashtra, why it cannot be replicated at the national stage right now, is because of the Congress, is what he was trying to imply, is what he had said in this long 1 hour interview, which we will be publishing on Saturday on Mumbai Tak. But this is what is very relevant right now, looking at that everyone is talking about that how this, you know, the large scale of parties are going to come together and challenge BJP and NDA for 2024. So this is really relevant. So basically what he's trying to say is that Congress should get its house in order. Only after that this large alliance is a possibility, and only after that they can at least think of challenging BJP and Prime Minister Modi for 2024
You know, just stay with me. I'm going to play out the next chunk that we've just got. Of course, we're picking out excerpts from a larger 1 hour interview, but listen into this and we'll be back with the both of them.
पण तुम्ही आता लेफ्ट आणि काँग्रेसचं उदाहरण दिलं, पण 2004 मध्ये जवळपास 4 वर्ष लेफ्टच्या पाठिंब्यावरती काँग्रेस आणि UPAने सरकार चालवलं होतं. अशा पद्धतीचं हे पोझिशन बंगाल आणि केरळमध्ये असताना सुद्धा, तर ते सरकार त्यावेळेस चाललं होतं. ममता बॅनर्जी त्या सरकारमध्ये पण होत्या.
त्याही होते, प्रश्न तो नाही. पण त्यावेळेला काँग्रेस हे आत्तासाठी 40 लोक नव्हते, तर काँग्रेसची सेंट 140च्या पेक्षा सुद्धा जास्त होती. आज काँग्रेसची सेंट ही त्यामध्ये फार कमी आहे आणि सगळ्यांचीच कमी आहे.
नाही, आपण एक महत्वाची गोष्ट आता म्हणाला, काँग्रेसची ताकद जी आहे ती कमी झाली आहे. हा तुमच्या समोर मोठा, कारण कुठे ना कुठे शरदराव आपण काँग्रेसी आहात, तिथूनच तुमची सुरुवात झाली. आणि आज देशात असे 9 मुख्यमंत्री आहेत जे एका काळी काँग्रेसमध्ये होते. ममता बॅनर्जी घ्या किंवा इतर नेते आहेत, जगनमोहन रेड्डी घ्या. कुठे ना कुठे आपल्याला वाटतं का की ही आजच्या राजकारणात सर्वात मोठी जी बदल झाली आहे की काँग्रेसची ताकद एवढी कमी झाली आहे आणि बीजेपी वाढली आहे. त्याच्यामुळे जोपर्यंत काँग्रेस वाढत नाही तोपर्यंत मोदीजींना आणि किंवा बीजेपीला कोण चॅलेंज आजच्या परिस्थितीत देऊ शकत नाही. की आपल्याला वाटतं की ही जे रिजनल पार्टीज आहेत ते एकत्र येऊन किंवा काँग्रेसचे ग्रँड कोअलिशन, जर जुने नेते परत आले काँग्रेसमध्ये तर ते चॅलेंज देऊ शकतील. काँग्रेस कमजोर कडी आहे का?
देखील आता काँग्रेसचा नवाच सांगतो ना, त्याचे हे जरी असं ते काँग्रेस देशाच्या राजकारणात रिलेव्हन्स असणारा पक्ष आहे. आज 5-7 राज्यात त्यांची सरकार आहेत.
Rajdeep, for a very, very long time, this is the strongest language, at least we've seen the NCP chief use against his ally partner there. But, clearly pretty much stating that the Congress is delusional.
Rather than say that it is against the Congress, I think he's giving, as I said earlier, a reality check. I think, there's a sense that the Congress has still not understood the implications of its consecutive defeats, heavy defeats in 2014 and 19. And you're seeing an element of churning within the Congress itself, the so-called G23. I mean, much of what Mr. Sharad Pawar said has been voiced by some leaders within the Congress, possibly at times within closed doors, but many of them are concerned about which direction is the Congress going. An interim Congress president in Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi in power but not taking responsibility, successive defeats at the state level, the Congress not going through any serious introspection. So I think what Mr. Pawar was offering is not so much, taking on the Congress, as offering a reality check. And I think that's the significance of it, because Mr. Pawar is an astute politician who recognizes at the moment that there is an opportunity that the BJP and Mr. Modi in these COVID times, in the times of slowing economic growth, in the times of rising prices, is vulnerable. But that vulnerability can be only exploited if the opposition and the Congress in particular get its act together. So somewhere you could argue that what Mr. Pawar is suggesting is echoing the language of those within the Congress, the likes of Kapil Sibal among others who've gone public with it, that the Congress needs to introspect and get its act together. And this is from top to bottom, organizationally and in terms of leadership. That Mr. Pawar, who's an ally of the Congress, is doing it here, of course, makes it even more significant. And remember, this is a state where there is a belief that Rahul Gandhi was not very keen on this grand alliance with the Shiv Sena and the NCP, but the alliance has lasted. It's all going to complete 2 years in November, and many believe that's because the likes of Mr. Pawar have held it together. I asked him, in fact, will you take this Maharashtra model nationally? And he said that's not possible, given these contradictions that are there, given the animosities that exist at various levels. So I think Mr. Pawar is, in a way, trying to convince the Congress that, look, you get your act together and we can exploit the BJP's vulnerabilities. You don't get your act together, it's almost game, set and match to Mr. Modi, even looking ahead to 2024, which is a couple of years away. But if you don't get your act together, the longer you take, the more difficult it becomes to defeat Mr. Modi.
Well, at least in this interview, Sahil, when you ask him about this grand anti-Modi alliance with the opposition all coming in together, he pretty much says there are too many contradictions. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. And that is one of the key members of this possible alliance saying it.
Absolutely. I have one more point to make here. I was listening to Rajdeep and, somewhere he's right. But at the same time, what I feel is that this is a frustration of the people who thinks that, they are taking on the BJP, they are taking on the government, But the weak link in the whole process of unity, bringing the people together, is basically Congress. It's what kind of a frustration which is coming out. When we asked him about the chunk what we played right now, during that, he also said, that when some people attack the Gandhi and Nehru ideology, people like us, like Mamta, they get very angry, they try to retaliate, but a lot of people from Congress, they keep quiet.
Right.
That is something what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say is that everybody else is doing their job. Mamta Banerjee is fighting there in Bengal. She's winning elections. A person like him brought two parties together which were completely of opposite ideology, Shiv Sena and Congress, and made the MVA government here in 2019.
Right.
But what is happening with the Congress? At the time of formation of MVA, he said that he was dealing directly with Sonia Gandhi. He heard that Rahul Gandhi was not happy with the alliance, but it was Sonia Gandhi who made it possible. He spoke to her.
Right.
Even the Congress MLAs she spoke to, they were pro this government. They wanted to form this government, but finally that government could happen because Sonia Gandhi's intervention was there. So somewhere he's trying to say, is taking out his frustration that the weakest link in this whole possibility of opposition unity is basically Congress, and the Congress's inability to take up the challenge of the BJP in the states where right now it is contesting.
Before I'm going to, we're going to play the entire chunk as well. But Rajdeep, before I let you go, just one very quick question, because this was a 1-hour interview. It's done in a regional language. It is in Marathi. A lot of surround sound, we can't really capture when we play those interviews out. I want you to give us a sense of this interview. Does he think Congress is too weak, hopeless, it's done for? What is the sense that you picked up?
No, look, I think that's not the case. In fact, as I said, Mr. Pawar believes that in politics, no one can be written off. We spoke to him, for example, the formation of this very government. And he's actually told us that, yes, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Modi, actually believed that the NCP might tie up with the BJP. And, everything suddenly went pear-shaped. The Shiv Sena, which was a long-standing ally of the BJP, joined hands with the NCP Congress. Look, Sharad Pawar is the politician who knows how to explore the art of possibilities. He may be 81, but at 81, he's been able to hold a state together despite the BJP targeting and trying to bring down the Maharashtra government virtually every month. So here is a politician who has strategy. I think there is an acknowledgement that that Rahul Gandhi takes on Mr. Modi, but there is also the reality check he's offering that that's not enough. You have to have a strategy. What is your strategy, electoral strategy going ahead for next year's presidential elections for 2024? We asked him, is he a candidate of the grand opposition for 2024? He admitted that he has good links with variety of politicians over the years, but said he was not interested in 2024. He wanted to bring together the opposition on issues. And he said that even in 1977, remember, there was no one leader who emerged. This could happen even ahead of 2024. So clearly he's still holding out hope. Look, Sharad Pawar is an old-style politician, never gives up on politics. So in a sense, this interview is, as we keep saying, a reality check to the opposition. Get your act together before it is too late.
Appreciate you both gentlemen for joining us. Thank you there. We're going to play out the entire interview in chunks over the course of the next few days, and you can catch it on Mumbai Tak. It gets published on Saturday. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us. So will the opposition pay heed? Sharad Pawar is showing them the mirror. Will the Congress look into the mirror in its reflection? Well, till now history stands testimony, not quite. But let's quickly shift focus.